administration to make us energy dominant and independent.
Yeah, well job in scheduling it. I'm sure you foresaw everything that was coming and lined this up nicely.
We definitely did.
But yeah, I think of the change in our energy situation today than 2 years ago and then 20 years ago. You know, we have a major conflict in the Middle East starting 10 or 12 days ago. And a lead up to this, 40 plus year lead up to this. Iran, the biggest state supporter of terrorism around the world, in an effort to build a nuclear bomb so they can cause even more trouble. And now we have, I think, very positive progress to remove that threat. But today, the price of oil is lower than it was when bullets started flying. That's just an amazing transformation. Where would we have been 4 years ago or 20 years ago with the same set of facts? We would just have wildly higher energy prices and fear in the marketplace. I think this is a great testament to President Trump's agenda of energy dominance. Not only is the United States by far the largest producer of oil in the world today, and by a factor of 2, the biggest producer of natural gas in the world today, but we have a rational policy around energy. Everyone knows that American energy exports are going to grow. They're not under threat, that permits are going to prevent, and the American energy production is going to peak soon and go away, as the fear was under President Biden. We know where we're going. We talk to our allies in the Middle East, who are major energy exporters, and treat them as they should be treated, as allies, where in the previous administration, they shunned those and sort of coddled Iran. Well, if we stop enforcing the sanctions, let them get another $100 billion from energy export sales, and just ask them to be nice, maybe things will go better. You know, who would have known that that wouldn't work? But I think we see just a dramatically different leadership style and dramatically different positioning of the U.S. today. And I think we're seeing the benefits of it, both in peace in the Middle East and in the lack of economic disruption and energy price spikes in the United States.
Right. So one of the things President Trump said yesterday morning on Truth Social, he said, to the Department of Energy, drill, baby, drill, and I mean now. Now, you guys have already taken a lot of steps, and I know the Interior Department, we did a previous event earlier this year with Secretary Burgum. You guys are both on the National Energy Dominance Council. You guys have already taken a lot of steps in this regard. And President Trump also said that he wants to keep oil prices down. Well, oil prices are down. We see the numbers today as we're taking the stage right now. It's down about 4.5% today. I mean, pretty incredible. It's way under $70. It's $65 a barrel about as we take the stage today. Your thoughts on what the president had to say about this yesterday and where things are going now?
And one last data point, gasoline prices today, we're at peak gasoline price, peak demand time in the summer. They're the lowest they've been in inflation-adjusted terms for 20 years, except for COVID, where everything went wrong and everyone stayed home and watched Netflix. But I mean, so we have low gasoline prices, low diesel prices, relatively low oil prices. And when President Trump said, drill, baby, drill, and I mean now, like did 100 drilling rigs stand up in that moment? Yeah, of course not. But that attitude, those words, they send a message. We believe in American energy production. We're proud in American energy production. We're forever going to be committed to American energy production. So when you think about that, and we're aligned, all of the other Arab nations in the Middle East, and Israel, of course, are aligned with Iran is the problem, and the United States and peace and commerce is the solution. That message says it's very hard to be a bad actor and try to do things on the margin to spike energy prices. You know, if the U.S. is leaning forward on energy, it's just a very different posture than 2 years ago when President Biden was president, right? Russia invaded Ukraine. There was no reduction in energy exports anywhere in the world, but oil prices skyrocketed because of the different posturing, different leadership styles of the two presidents.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things the president said just moments ago on Truth Social, you know, that he's been on a roll today, by the way, guys. Like President Trump is out there on a roll, no doubt. But he said that, you know, Iran can keep selling their oil to China and that he hopes that China buys American oil, too. Your thoughts on just more broadly than just the China question, but the fact is that under this administration, we're exporting a lot again, as compared with the previous administration, a lot of American energy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is a transformation. When on inauguration night at one of the events, the Indian foreign minister came up to me. Fantastic. I had not met him before, and his simple question was, can we count on the United States to be an exporter of natural gas for the long run? India is very interested in switching some of their energy sector and their economy. They are probably the most coal dominant of any large nation. China's close, but India even more so. And India was saying, we want to go to more natural gas, but you want to have a country like the United States who's strong and reliable and an ally as your supplier, not just today, but into the future. And of course, his comment was referring to the export pause that at that time was still in place. Like, we had become this huge producer of gas. We'd started exporting a lot of gas. The world loved that. And then we said, well, maybe not. We may not export anymore. We're going to pause. That's just a chilling signal to energy markets around the world. But that kind of nonsense is gone. And I should say quickly, for the change of roles, you mentioned China buying energy from the United States. 20 years ago, the United States was the largest importer of oil on the planet and the largest importer of natural gas on the planet. And China produced roughly as much oil as they consumed. Today, China is by far the world's biggest importer of oil and natural gas. We've just swapped roles, and we are now the largest producer of both of those. We're just in a much better situation.
So we've talked a little bit about oil here. Can you talk to us also about the role of LNG in this broader energy equation, in the, making the United States energy dominant on the world stage? What role does LNG play in the global energy landscape? How does the United States fit into that picture?
Yeah, fantastic. So when I spoke at an energy conference early this year, and a year before, Jennifer Granholm, my predecessor, had spoke, and one of the things she said in her remarks, this is soon after the pause was announced, she said, soon LNG exports will be in the rear view mirror, right? This was this belief that if we just have some more subsidies for wind and solar, somehow we're not going to need natural gas soon. So as an energy nerd, I often just dig in the data and then write about what's actually happening. Not what we dream is happening, not what the future might happen, but what's actually happening. And if you look from the financial crisis to today, the world consumption of energy has grown a little more than 20%. That means everyone's living better lives. We've got 100 extra exajoules of energy in the world energy system. The fastest growing source of energy by far and away, natural gas. 40% of all that gross is natural gas. The U.S. has rapidly gone from, as I said, the world's largest importer to the world's largest exporter. We used to have over 1,000 drilling rigs drilling for natural gas when we were the world's largest importer. Today we have 100 rigs drilling for natural gas, more than a 90% decline, and we're by far the world's largest exporter. But then for a year we said, maybe we're not going to grow our exports anymore. So natural gas is 25% of global energy and the fastest growing energy source. So it is just critical to our country and to the future of the world. And we are dead set in leaning into that, having this grow. It's, I think, the second or third largest U.S. export right now as well, probably on its way to being number one.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a lot about the big, beautiful bill. But before we get to that, a little more breaking news out there. Another big story that we're tracking is the heat wave. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in the United States. Everybody that's outside, you feel how hot it is here. That puts a massive demand on our electricity and on our grid. You guys have taken a number of emergency actions in Pennsylvania, Michigan, in the Southeast, and Puerto Rico. Can you talk to us about these emergency actions that you've taken to keep plants going and get them to the capacity that they need to be able to handle this surge in electricity need?
I can't help but point out the contrast again. During the previous administration, they surged the employees at the Department of Energy. They surged the spending from the Department of Energy, but yet we produced almost no incremental electricity at the end of 4 years than we did before, but they were successful in getting electricity prices across the country up on average 25%. Can you imagine a business? No meaningful increase in output, but yet prices are 25% higher. That's hard to do with hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidy going in theory, to make electricity cheaper. So what they did, of course, was force the shutdown of a lot of reliable, mostly biggest source coal plants. They shut down plants long before their retirement age because they were out of fashion and said, we're going to replace a 24/7 plant with a whole bunch of stuff that works when the wind blows or the sun shines. They forgot about clouds and that every night the sun goes down and it isn't always windy. And so we got expensive electricity and destabilizing our grid. So one of the things we did at the department, as you just mentioned, there was a large coal plant in southwestern Michigan, 15 years from its retirement date, for political reasons. We're going to get rid of coal in Michigan. Let's just shut that down. And so we intervened. We have emergency powers to say, look, we're coming into peak demand time. We want the lights and air conditionings to work all summer long. And we want industry to resource the United States. We want to lead in AI. We have huge demand growth for electricity. We're not going to keep digging a hole. We stop digging the hole. I was criticized for saving dirty coal, expensive coal, for keeping that plant open on a Friday. 2 days later, there was a blackout in MISO, the Mideastern System Operator, which is where this coal plant was. So we're just trying to bring common sense back. Today, there is a plant running in Philadelphia. It's an old plant. It's from the 1800s. It burns oil to produce electricity, but it only runs at peak demand time. On inauguration night, which was peak demand in PJM so far this year, the oil supplied 4% of PJM electricity, twice as much as wind and solar combined at peak demand time. That's what matters. Who's there when you're at peak demand? So this plant was slated to be closed. We as well issued an emergency order, said keep that plant open. That was only a week or so ago. It's running as we speak right now. So we want to keep the lights on. We want to stop the rise in electricity. And we want to do everything we can to enable the growth of electricity so we can bring industry back to our country and we can lead in AI.
Okay, so big, beautiful bill. Everybody's talking about the tax provisions and the immigration provisions, but I don't see people out there talking about the energy provisions in this. And now they're going through what's called a bird bath. And so for folks that maybe don't understand what a bird bath is, it's not like a bird tweet. It's a name for Senator Robert Byrd, the longtime Senate Majority Leader who developed this whole process of reconciliation, which allows them to get bills through with the 51 votes instead of the 60. Anyway, point is, there's whatever ends up making out, there's still going to be a lot of energy stuff in here. Can you talk to us about the energy stuff in the big, beautiful bill? This is the president's whole agenda. This is going to unleash American energy in a way that even bigger than what you guys have been able to do from the administration so far.
100%. The one big, beautiful bill is transformative in our trajectory on energy. I wrote a few years ago about the differing trajectories between the United States and Europe on energy. We didn't have wildly different energy prices 20 years ago. Today, they're just dramatically different. Our economies dramatically diverged in size and in wealth and whatever. But yet, for 4 years, we tried to jump on the European express train to make energy expensive, unreliable, and export our industries, just like Europe had done. This bill is the pivot. It's the reversal of that. You know, we have spent hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize electricity sources. I don't care where energy comes from. All I care about is secure, reliable, affordable energy from any source that can deliver those conditions. But if you subsidize something, you're going to get more of it. And we've spent a lot of money on other dumb things as well, but on subsidizing wind and solar so massively that we keep building more and more of it. Well, at peak demand at PJM, I mentioned after Inauguration Day, wind and solar combined were 2%. So you need our entire legacy grid there and operating to keep people alive when it's cold or cool when the peak heat hits. You need that whole grid then, but now you're going to build a second grid that's just a parasite. When the wind blows, you got to turn this thing down. When the sun shines, you got to turn this thing down. When the sun goes down and the wind dies, you got to turn all this stuff up. So we just drove ourselves to. But if you keep paying businesses to build stuff, they'll do it. And so this bill is to end these subsidies, not just on wind and solar, but a whole bunch of other kind of energy green dreams that when you subsidize something, it should become cheaper. When the government pays for the community center, well, the admission fees are lower. We subsidize electricity sources and we get more expensive electricity. That's the worst possible subsidy. $1 in subsidy and an extra $1 on your electricity bill. So the big beautiful bill will not only end this stuff or put in a relatively rapid sunset of that, it'll remove a whole bunch of other restrictions in leasing and permitting reform that allow development of whatever energy source. We want to see nuclear get rolling again. Geothermal's coming along in a next generation wave. Oil, gas, coal. We want everything that works economically and betters American lives. This bill unleashes that.
Mm-hmm. So now, from what I understand too, there's likely to be some leasing stuff in here regarding the Gulf of America, onshore, offshore, as well as in Alaska. Can you talk to us a little bit about that stuff?
Yeah, so the Biden administration also decided that they would go against the law that requires lease sales and not do lease sales if it was politically popular to not go into lease sales, and to take certain lands. We got a contingency over here that thinks it'll be great if we just say this land will never be developed, including a place called the National Petroleum Reserve. Like, does that sound like a place you definitely should not drill in? That's in Alaska, right? Huge upside, huge assets there. But you saw the 4 years to approve a few acres in a gigantic National Petroleum Reserve. So the big, beautiful bill allows leasing again in ANWR, in NPRA, the National Petroleum Reserve, in the Cook Inlet of Alaska, which is the source of the gas that keep the lights on in Alaska. Alaska's had 5 years of declining population because their energy prices are so high and their supply of gas, their biggest source of electricity, is declining in that local area near where they live. So that leads to other projects. We need to build infrastructure in Alaska so the giant energy resources in the north can power and better the lives of the people in the south, and maybe our allies in Asia as well. So we need to be able to develop responsibly and carefully, but per the law. And one big beautiful bill restores a number of these activities that are key to the functioning of our energy system.
And another thing is apparently about the royalty rates, right? Like, so one of the things we saw during the Biden administration with the IRA was they raised the royalty rates on these things, and what that did was it discouraged investment, right? Like, so this would drop them back down to what they were before, which is ideally going to help boom this.
What they've been for like 100 years.
Right.
So exactly. Yeah, it's just gone back to the original establishment. Mm-hmm. But think about that. You want to drill on federal lands. Well, it's massively harder to get a permit. It takes years and longer. You may not be able to build any infrastructure to get to it. Whereas most of the oil and gas drilling, it's on state lands and on private lands because they're a better business partner. So the Biden administration decided we're going to take a difficult business partner and make it much worse. We're going to threaten to not permit. We're going to not permit certain areas. We're going to raise your royalty rates. And what did they get? No surprise. They got more expensive energy.
Mm-hmm. So the big picture here is that the Senate is saying, I saw some things this morning, that Senator Thune is out there saying that he's hoping to get votes going on this even as soon as later this week. I talked to the Senate Majority Leader this past weekend on our radio show. He was saying that they hope to get the bill out of the Senate by July 4th. They're still on track for that. Can you talk to us about how important this would be in fitting into that broader energy agenda of what we're talking about here, about becoming a net exporter, booming the American energy industry, and how that fits into the economy? Lay out the big picture stakes for us here.
Also, permitting reform in here for LNG natural gas exports. As I mentioned, this is a rapidly growing export of the United States, but you talk to the developers of liquefied natural gas export terminals, oh my God, it is a year's painstaking, high-risk process. You could spend $200 million to get a plan to acquire some land, and then you're not sure if you can get through this thicket to actually get your permit to then spend tens of billions of dollars to build a huge terminal. So the bill just goes back to sort of common sense on permitting of this. Of course, we're going to do environmental reviews and safety reviews. It's just going back to the original intention of permitting. Very critical for the bill. It's going to, again, get rid of these subsidies and distortions that have hurt not just our electricity market, but our broader energy markets. One of the greatest upsides for the United States is to bring industry back to our country. In a green delusion, we decided to make it so hard to build things in the United States that instead what happens? We still consume those same products, just now they're built in Asia with a coal-powered electricity instead of natural gas in the United States, and then they're Asian workers, and then we load them on diesel-powered ships and ship it across the ocean and bring it back to the United States and call that green or a climate policy. There's just so much nonsense. The one big beautiful bill, actually, it is big. There are a lot of things in it, but a lot of them are just cleaning out underbrush and nonsense. So it's easier to build things in our country again, remove the distortions from the energy markets, unleash American businesses to build energy production of all different kinds, but kinds that work without subsidies.
So you mentioned all the radical left spending on all these green energy things that they were pushing back during the previous administration. I think a few weeks ago you guys announced a review that you've completed of the actions of the Loan Programs Office at the Energy Department back during the Biden administration. From what we've seen from Election Day, after it was clear that Donald Trump was reelected president in November, to Inauguration Day, you guys discovered more than $90 billion in loans that were either closed or committed. That is more than the 15-year entire history of this office. This is, I think, a massive scandal. Can you talk to us about what you guys have discovered? What do we do? What do we do about this?
Yeah, absolutely infuriating. The Loan Program Office was created over 15 years ago. You know, of course, the idea was, hey, there's new or emerging energy technologies or new trends. Let's be a partner with corporations in developing some of these technologies. Solyndra maybe being a famous one in the early days. So the government in general has not been a great picker of winners and losers because they don't look at businesses. Governments look at politics. And so it's done some good things. It's done some bad things. But yeah, to put that in context, over 15 years, it had put out about $43 billion. That's a lot of money. A lot of them gone bad, but not all of them. $43 billion over 15 years. Then we had an election on November 5th last year, right? And President Trump won that election. Kamala Harris, Biden's VP, lost that election. After that election day, and until President Trump's inauguration, $90 billion. Over twice what was done in 15 years was done in 76 days. Like the IRA and the Infrastructure Act were passed 2.5 years before that. 2.5, they had good ideas. They should have been pursuing those good ideas. And worse, recently, the more we look into it, $90 billion in those 76 days, more than half of that, $49 billion in the last 2 days, Thursday and Friday, you know, before inauguration the next Monday. So this, if you're an American taxpayer, is pretty infuriating. And if you look, there were deals in there. These are project grants, different from the loans, that had been granted $2.3 million for their process. And then right before Inauguration Day, that 2.3 grant was upsized to $230 million. And there's one page, justification for the upsize, blank.
This is unbelievable.
This is the paperwork. And it's obviously undermined confidence in the Department of Energy. One of the key things I want to do is restore confidence that we can run a government department like a business. We can be responsible stewards of American taxpayers' money. We can deploy that money judiciously and only in ways that are actually going to help the American energy system grow and energy prices go down and job opportunities expand. But you have to have a limited role. You can't have the government. And of course, the total number of grants is like over 1,000. Can you imagine a private equity firm or a venture capital firm or your own personal portfolio where you invest in over 1,000 things? That's not careful, judicious choice of deployment for strategic reasons.
Can we claw any of that money back? Can those grants or loans be undone? What the Biden administration did in those last few months?
It gets worse. There at the end, they also took out very standard language in any commercial lender, and they got rid of cancellation clauses. Anytime you borrow money for your house or your business or whatever, you know, if circumstances change or something falls out of line, there's always cancellation abilities. They removed those so is very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. Now, there's as many cases that we can do things we are. We're talking to the lenders. We're talking to people who have been committed huge grants to say, walk us through your project. Is this a bridge to nowhere, or is this something that's going to better the American system? So we're working with the counterparties. I would say a lot of them that probably are a little bit embarrassed that they are where they are. A lot of them have voluntarily said, never mind, okay. Now, not that we're not going to get all of the money back, but we will get a fair amount. We will get some of it back. We will have some redeployed into more sensible things. But a lot of it is we can't stop, and we're pained to watch it.
Okay, so now I would imagine that most of these things are going to the radical left's green energy agenda type of thing. They're just trying to, as we saw from what Lee Zeldin.
That's a bold prediction you're saying there.
Yeah.
It might be true.
So again, one of the things we've seen here in we saw the left pushing this whole net zero thing. Where AOC was predicting the end of the world. I don't know. Are we there yet? Is the world over yet? I think it was 12 years ago, something like that. Talk to us a little bit about how to address the radical left on this. You've been kind of leading a way for Republicans to do better at addressing the issues of climate and energy and talk about this. Talk to us a little bit about how you're doing that.
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm here is how far off the world, the rich, developed world has gotten off on energy and climate change. I went to college to work on nuclear energy because the mania when I was a kid was the world was coming to the end and hydrocarbons were the problem. Then it was that we were running out of them and you can't have industrial society without them. Now the mania is the world is coming to an end and the problem is the hydrocarbons, but it's too much of them. Otherwise, the manias have a lot of similarities. But it's just crazy what's happened with climate change. I got into the climate thing 25 years ago. I developed some technologies to measure the motion of fluid underground. Blind squirrel finds nut. Helped start the shale revolution with this technology. But we also were getting contracts from national labs to measure sequestration, injection of CO2 underground. 25 years ago, this was an experimental idea. Maybe we can address climate change. I'm like, this is going to be an awesome business line for me. And shale revolution is natural gas is displacing coal. This is another big driver of reduced greenhouse gas emissions. To me, if reducing greenhouse gas emissions was the world's most important thing, I was perfectly set up in business. Technologies to monitor sequestration. My business was leveraged around the shale gas revolution. That was the hero of climate change alarmists at the time. But if you dive into the data, we have increased greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. They do absorb infrared radiation. It does lead to a positive warming force. So the kernel is real, but almost everything else you hear about climate change is either false or just wildly exaggerated. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has there's a whole cadre of people that do economics, that study what are the potential impacts of climate change going forward. How wide could that be? The people who have dedicated their life to climate economics, their bottom line conclusion, it's a slow-moving thing and not even close to the world's biggest problem. In their own words, not even nearly as important as trade or education or rule of law or whatever in these things. But yet we've decided the planet's going to end. We've declared an emergency, which means we can do everything stupid under the sun because it's an emergency. You can't think, you can't justify anything. We're an emergency. And I have called net zero 2050, this goal, the most sinister goal ever. And we have been in the midst globally, last 10, 15 years, of the greatest malinvestment in the history of humanity. In the history of humanity. Trillions of dollars have been spent to save the planet. By far, the biggest dollars by far have been wind, solar, batteries, and expanding transmission lines because you can put wind panels way out in the middle of nowhere and put it and bring the electricity back to cities where people live. This trillions of dollars last year just got to just over 3% of global energy. That's it. 3 to 10 trillion, depending on how you count it, has got to just a little over 3% of global energy, and everywhere meaningful penetration, higher electricity prices, and deindustrialization. I think even the 3% would overstate any potential greenhouse gas abatement, because in countries that deploy it, Germany or United Kingdom or California, industry just leaves. It just goes somewhere else. You don't reduce emissions. You just move where they're produced to countries that have older technologies and therefore probably higher emissions. It is so irresponsible. But I say to Republicans and conservatives, read the data, look into this thing. It's a real thing. Your kids are all hopped up on it. So you want to be reasonably knowledgeable. You want to be able to engage with them. I go to universities, and Extinction Rebellion is protesting when I arrive on campus. They're holding a funeral for Mother Earth. And at the end of a talk I gave at CU Boulder, I have a line of people for internships, jobs. Kids believe climate change is near the end of the world, but presented with data and facts. And then you show them, like, here's what we know about climate change. Here's what's happened so far. No increase of extreme weather, which is one of the punchlines too, despite endless proclamations of everyone. That's just the data. Then I talk to kids about, today we have 1 billion people that live like us and 7 billion people that want to live like us. They want to wear fancy clothes made out of oil and gas. They want to travel on buses and cars and planes. They want to have light switches in their house and heating and cooling. Only 1 billion have that. 7 billion want to have that. We have to have massively more energy in this world. 2 billion people cook their daily meals the way our ancestors did, burning wood or dung indoors. 2 to 3 million easily preventable deaths from that indoor air pollution. And at the Congress of the Parties, the climate gathering in Glasgow a few years, the 19 wealthy nations of the world pledged not to lend any more money in the developing world for hydrocarbon development. No, they don't want propane stoves for those 2 billion people so they can live longer, healthier lives, so women can be liberated and don't have to gather wood and sit over smoke-filled fires, but can actually turn a stove on and turn a stove off. Like, the world has gone crazy on climate change and net zero. The facts say completely different actions are warranted.
And so, Mr. Secretary, I get a couple more questions for you here. First is, on this note, we've seen the International Energy Agency project that peak oil demand, we're going to hit peak oil demand by 2030. Your thoughts on that projection, and why is the USA a part of this organization?
We are in dialogues. I.e., the International Energy Agency and the Energy Information Administration, that's part of the DOE, have been 2 of 3 key energy gathering data things in the world. They used to provide a very important source. Now they've become political, and now they project sources of people's dreams or green wishes. Yeah. So oil demand has grown about 1.1% compound annual growth rate over the last 50 years. Total energy growth is 1.6%. 1.1% with oil. If you look at just the last 20 years, 1.2%. The rate of growth of oil isn't even slowing. So they're just nonsensical. They're just saying to those 7 billion people, no, 1 billion of us are going to keep living these well-energized lives, but you guys, you got to stay where you are.
It's pretty unbelievable. And the last thing I would ask you here, and again, I would ask everybody too in the audience, we're going to have a great discussion after this with Mike Summers from API. So stay seated. Mr. Secretary, just about artificial intelligence, we talked about this a little bit. It's going to have a huge demand on electricity. I've been told something like 23 or more % extra electricity to get these supercomputers going. And I think the Energy Department actually has the largest supercomputer in the world.
4 of the top 10 as well.
Yeah, 4 of the top 10. Talk to us a little bit about the AI race and what you guys are doing at the Energy Department to prepare for this surge in electricity that we're going to need.
So AI, I went to college and AI was the hype. Think about that. So it has been the hype for decades. So I understand people's like, oh, we've heard this hype a long time. The difference is it's really happening now. We have enough computing power that we really can have transformative, automated thinking, logic, reasoning, and it's going to change our world, I think, enormously for the positive. With productivity of people and businesses in our homes, you find information so much easier. There's downsides, of course. Your kids are cheating on papers and all this stuff. And but what we got to get them to realize is this is a tool to make you do more things, not replace what you used to do on a test. So I think AI is going to be huge. It's going to be transformative for science. so many cancers and endemic diseases that have plagued our world. We're going to figure out exactly how they work at a molecular level. We're going to design drugs and treatments to cure them. Like, the next 5 years are going to be transformative. But AI is also critical for national defense, not just for offensive capabilities, but for defensive capabilities. I compared recently AI to the Manhattan Project. Manhattan Project was really the birthplace of the Department of Energy, was Los Alamos Lab, Oak Ridge in Tennessee. We built an atomic bomb in less than 2.5 years during war conditions in World War II, with just getting an understanding of nuclear physics at that time. An incredible, the first giant group science project, unbelievable, and it was critical that we were first. If Nazi Germany got an atomic bomb before us, we would live in a different world today. AI is the next Manhattan Project, and we've had a lot of great things in between, but not Manhattan Project level. This is Manhattan Project. We cannot be second. We cannot be behind in China in artificial intelligence. We have a lead today. We have the best companies. We have a lead in science. We have a lead in our actually computing power right now. But China's been building energy system, growing their electricity grid massively for decades. We have smothered ours. We have to reverse that. If we don't, we will not lead in AI, and we will go into a very, very different world. But we can win, and we must win and stay the lead in AI. Thank God President Trump got elected. If President Trump had not been elected, the next 4 years is going to be the huge break. AI 4 years from now will look nothing like AI today. We are at that inflection point. And if we continued the smothering, anti-energy, foolish policies of the last administration, a lot of AI would just be done overseas. You couldn't build it here. It's going to happen. It's going to happen somewhere else. So that is our single biggest job, is to unleash American business, entrepreneurship, stop closing plants that exist today, and make it wildly easier to invest money and build a new electricity generation. We're going to need probably somewhere between 50 and 150 extra gigawatts of power generation in the next 5 or 6 years. This is a massive build, but it will be enormously beneficial for America. It's going to supercharge our industries. We're going to bring a ton of jobs to build these data centers. We're going to reshore semiconductor. Like, the next 5 years are going to be awesome, but they're only going to be awesome if we can get the government out of the way so that private capital, which is diving in, this is not a new government bill that we have to pay. This is a get out of the way and create a reasonable regulatory structure so that America can and will prevail in the AI race. I'm very excited about it, but I worry about it at night as well. We cannot get second place here. We have to lead.
Exciting stuff, Mr. Secretary. Really want to thank you for joining us here. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Matt.
Stay seated. We're going to bring up